Hello, my name is Maryam, and my EPQ investigates the issues and concerns regarding large-scale mountaineering.
Mountaineering has become increasingly popular across the world, providing opportunities for recreation, personal achievement, and economic development. However, the growth of this activity has also created a range of challenges for both people and the environments in which it takes place. In this video, I will explore the impacts of large-scale mountaineering through a variety of perspectives, including its effect on local communities, human health, and mountain ecosystems. Using Box Hill and Seven Sisters as case studies, alongside examples from major mountain regions, I will examine both the benefits and drawbacks of increased human activities in these environments. It is important to note that Box Hill and Seven Sisters are not large-scale mountaineering destinations. However, they still provide useful examples of how human activity can impact natural environments and local communities.
Whilst I'm hiking Box Hill today, which is relatively small and much more accessible like famous mountains like Mount Everest, it's still a powerful tool to compare the environmental and social impacts that large-scale mountaineering has. But what is large-scale mountaineering? Well, large-scale mountaineering refers to big mountains that attract a vast amount of climbers each year. For example, Mount Everest is one of the most popular mountains in the world. It attracts hundreds of climbers per season. Whilst it has many benefits for tourism, there are also major concerns that we need to look into. One major environmental concern is footpath erosion. Even here, you can see how repeated foot traffic wears down the path. However, on a much larger scale, repeated foot traffic like this can destroy vegetation and permanently alter landscapes. This all used to be grass, but because people walk here, it's not grass anymore due to erosion. This reduces biodiversity, something which is very important to us.
But pause, why is biodiversity very important to us? Biodiversity refers to the variety of life within an ecosystem, including plants, animals, and microorganisms, as well as the interactions between them. It is important because it helps ecosystems remain stable, resilient, and able to recover from environmental changes. First of all, biodiversity keeps ecosystems stable. Every plant, animal, and microorganism has a role. So when hikers damage paths and destroy plant life, it can disrupt entire food chains. And once that balance is disturbed, it's really hard to restore. Biodiversity supports things like clean air, clean water, and soil quality. So when large-scale mountaineering causes erosion and damages vegetation, it doesn't just affect that one area. It can have wider environmental consequences.
Another issue is overcrowding. On Everest, people queue for hours in freezing temperatures, increasing the risk of injury or even death.
A key example of this was the infamous 2019 Everest traffic jam. Shocking images emerged of hundreds of climbers forming a queue near the summit in an area called the death zone, where oxygen levels are critically low. One reason why the 2019 Everest season became so dangerous was the very short climbing window. This graph shows temperatures at Everest Base Camp throughout the year. For most months, temperatures stay well below freezing, especially during winter. Because conditions are only slightly safer in late spring, most climbers attempt the summit in May. This means hundreds of people end up climbing at the same time, causing major overcrowding near the summit. However, these queues became especially dangerous because climbers were forced to wait inside the death zone. The death zone refers to areas above 8,000 meters where oxygen levels are too low for the human body to function properly for long periods of time. Normally, climbers try to move through this area as quickly as possible, but during the 2019 season, overcrowding caused many people to remain there for hours. As oxygen supplies began running low, climbers became increasingly exhausted and vulnerable to altitude sickness and hypothermia. This meant that something as simple as standing still in a queue could become life-threatening. But why can simply standing in a queue become so dangerous? The answer lies in altitude sickness. As climbers ascend higher into the mountains, the air becomes thinner, meaning there is less oxygen available with every breath. In the death zone, the human body begins to deteriorate faster than it can recover. Fortunately, this wasn't something that I had to worry about during my hike at Box Hill. At just a few hundred meters above sea level, there is plenty of oxygen available, and the risks associated with extreme altitude simply don't exist. However, for climbers attempting some of the world's highest peaks, the situation is very different. At first, symptoms can seem relatively mild. Climbers may experience headaches, dizziness, nausea, and extreme fatigue. However, if they continue ascending without acclimatizing properly, the condition can become far more serious. In severe cases, fluid can build up in the lungs or the brain, leading to confusion, loss of coordination, difficulty breathing, and eventually death. This is why climbers must spend weeks gradually adapting to the altitude before attempting a summit. The danger becomes even greater when overcrowding causes delays. Every extra minute spent waiting near the summit means longer exposure to the extreme altitude and lower oxygen levels. A climber who might have safely reached the top can instead become critically ill simply because they were forced to remain in the death zone for too long. While mountaineering can create environmental and health challenges, it can also have important social benefits. When I visited Box Hill, I didn't go alone. I went with my friends, and that changed the experience completely. The walk itself was enjoyable, but what made it memorable was being able to spend time together, talk, and share the experience as a group. This is something that can be seen across mountaineering at all scales. Whether it's a short hike in Surrey or an expedition in the Himalayas, mountains often bring people together. Climbers rely on each other for encouragement, support, and teamwork, particularly in difficult conditions. A notable example is the Cholitas Escaladores in Bolivia. Originally working as cooks and support staff for mountaineering expeditions, these indigenous Aymara women began climbing mountains themselves, despite mountaineering traditionally being dominated by men. What makes their story particularly remarkable is that they often climb wearing traditional Polaris skirts and bowler hats, clothing that reflects their cultural identity. Rather than changing who they were to fit into the mountaineering world, they brought their own culture with them onto the mountains. Through climbing together, the Cholitas built a strong and supportive community. They encouraged one another, shared knowledge and experience, and proved that mountaineering is not limited to a particular gender, background, or social group. Their achievements have challenged stereotypes surrounding both women and indigenous communities in Bolivia. By successfully climbing some of South America's highest peaks, they have demonstrated that mountaineering can be a tool for empowerment as well as recreation. The Cholitas show that mountains can do more than provide adventure. They can bring people together, create a sense of belonging, and give individuals the confidence to challenge expectations that may have previously limited them. Their story shows how mountaineering can be about more than reaching a summit. It can create opportunities for friendship, confidence, and a sense of belonging. Similar communities exist around the world, where people come together through a shared passion for the outdoors. To conclude, Box Hill highlights the range of impacts that can occur in a popular natural environment. The next case study explores a very different natural environment, Seven Sisters. Today I'm exploring the Seven Sisters Cliffs. These cliffs attract thousands of visitors each year for its scenic routes and coastal views. The issue which is caused by large-scale mountaineering is the damage to wildlife habitat. When hikers walk up these designated paths, plants can become crushed and habitats can be damaged. Many animals rely on these environments for their survival, so when human activity disturbs these ecosystems, biodiversity can be reduced. As discussed earlier, one of the consequences of increased human activity in mountain environments is the destruction of wildlife habitats. Mountain ecosystems are often home to species that are highly adapted to these unique conditions. However, when thousands of visitors repeatedly travel along the same routes, the surrounding vegetation can become damaged and areas that wildlife depend on begin to disappear. Plants provide essential habitats for many animals, offering sources of food, shelter, and protection. When this vegetation is removed, the effects extend beyond just the plants themselves. Animals may be forced to leave their natural habitats, struggle to find resources, and face greater competition for survival.
This links to wider issues surrounding large-scale mountaineering around the world. As outdoor tourism becomes more popular, human activity can continue to destroy these ecosystems, as we've explored today.
Another issue associated with large-scale mountaineering is the exploitation of Sherpas. During our expedition, each participant carried a 35-litre backpack containing essential equipment and supplies. Although these bags were relatively manageable, carrying them over long distances in uneven terrain still required a significant amount of physical effort. Sherpas are an ethnic group native to the Himalayan region of Nepal. Due to their experience living and working in high altitudes, many Sherpas are employed as guides and porters on mountain expeditions, particularly on Mount Everest. This experience helped me appreciate the demands placed on Sherpas, who often carry loads that are considerably heavier while working at much higher altitudes and in far more dangerous conditions. Sherpas play a vital role in supporting mountaineering expeditions, particularly on Mount Everest. Their responsibilities include carrying equipment, transporting supplies, setting up camps, fixing ropes, and guiding climbers through hazardous sections of the mountain. As mountaineering has become increasingly popular, the demand for Sherpa labor has also grown. Many climbers rely heavily on Sherpas to help them reach the summit safely. However, this means that Sherpas are often required to undertake some of the most dangerous tasks, such as crossing unstable ice falls and carrying heavy loads through extreme weather conditions. Despite the risks involved, many Sherpas continue this work because it provides an important source of income for themselves and their families. Therefore, large-scale mountaineering can bring economic benefits to local communities. However, concerns have been raised about whether the level of risk faced by Sherpas is fair, particularly when compared to the rewards received by tourists and commercial expedition companies. This demonstrates how large-scale mountaineering can create complex social and ethical challenges, where economic opportunities must be balanced against the safety and well-being of local workers. Another environmental issue associated with large-scale mountaineering is the increase in waste left behind in mountain environments. As mountaineering has become more popular, more climbers are traveling to high-altitude locations such as Mount Everest. During expeditions, climbers bring essential supplies including food, equipment, and oxygen, but some waste can be left behind on the mountain. At high altitudes, waste becomes a bigger issue because the extreme cold slows down decomposition. This means that rubbish can remain in the environment for long periods of time, affecting the natural appearance of mountain landscapes and potentially harming wildlife. During my visit to Seven Sisters, I noticed waste bins placed along walking routes. This showed how more accessible areas can manage visitor impacts by providing facilities that encourage people to dispose of their rubbish responsibly. However, in remote mountain environments, waste management is much more difficult because of the harsh conditions and limited access. This has led to initiatives such as cleanup expeditions, where teams remove rubbish left by previous climbers, as well as stricter regulations requiring climbers to take their waste back down the mountain. Overall, the issue of waste demonstrates the wider challenge of large-scale mountaineering. While it challenges people to experience and explore mountain environments, it also creates a responsibility to protect these fragile ecosystems. In conclusion, large-scale mountaineering can provide a number of benefits. Throughout this investigation, I found that it can strengthen local communities by creating jobs and generating income through increased visitor activity. These benefits can improve local economies and provide opportunities for people living in mountain regions. However, after considering both the positive and negative impacts, I believe that the drawbacks of large-scale mountaineering outweigh its benefits. My research and fieldwork highlighted several environmental concerns. Increased human activity can contribute to footpath erosion, which damages vegetation and reduces biodiversity. Waste left behind by climbers can accumulate in mountain environments, particularly at high altitudes where decomposition occurs very slowly. In addition, the destruction and disturbance of wildlife habitats can threaten species that are specially adapted to these environments. I also found that large-scale mountaineering can create significant social challenges. Overcrowding can reduce the quality of the experience for visitors and place additional pressure on local infrastructure and natural environments. Furthermore, the exploitation of Sherpas raises ethical concerns, as many undertake dangerous work in order to support the growing demand for mountaineering expeditions. there are also risks to human health. Altitude sickness remains a serious issue in high mountain environments and can have severe consequences for climbers who are unprepared or ascend too quickly. Although Box Hill and Seven Sisters are not examples of large-scale mountaineering destinations, they provided valuable insight into how increased human activity can affect both natural environments and local communities. When combined with wider research into major mountain regions such as Mount Everest, these case studies help to demonstrate the broader impacts of large-scale mountaineering. Overall, I believe that while mountaineering can provide economic and social benefits, the environmental damage, ethical concerns, and health risks associated with large-scale mountaineering currently outweigh these advantages. Therefore, if mountaineering is to become more sustainable in the future, greater efforts must be made to protect mountain ecosystems, support local communities, and reduce the negative impacts of human activity.